And welcome back to the Flow Sports Fix on this Wednesday. It's time to look at some AFL, and we're joined by the Statman.
Thanks, Clayton. Yes, it is time for us to have a look at AFL news, and Patrick Dangerfield, certainly his situation under the gun today. But before we get to that, actually, our footy tipping, we haven't really talked about this yet, Clayton, and I thought I would just go through those who have filled out their forms. Now, I noticed with interest that Courtney isn't involved in our footy tips this year from the morning flow, from the Brekkie flow, sorry. And, of course, there's an understandable reason as to why Courtney's just not very good at footy tipping. So that makes perfect sense that she wouldn't be involved. But maybe she'll join later on. I don't know. But either way, she's certainly not heading the list. Guess who is? That's right, yours truly. Mind you, there are three others that got 6 on the weekend. Only got 6, but I did get the margin on the Friday night game, which puts me ahead of our very own Ellis Gellius from Flow News 24 and the Flow Man as well, who is back on the 5. On 6 as well. On 5, we have a few folk as well. I believe we've got our very own Dan Crouch and Carl Carrington from Flow News 24 and Clayton Bester. All the way back on 3, Hannah Bush and Ricky Lambert, who just has got no idea what he's doing in terms of tips. And Lauren from The Office, she is bringing up the rear with just 2 tips. I'm not sure how you can only get 2 tips in that round, to be honest, without seriously trying hard to not get tips. So bad luck, Lauren. We've already cleared out. So I think it's a race in 6 for the win this year already, and Ricky Lambert is not part of that. All right, let's have a look at Patrick Dangerfield and his ban last night. So 3 games is what Patrick Dangerfield has received for rough conduct after an accidental head clash with Jake Kelly left him with significant concussion and a broken snoz. Now, once upon a time, accidental head clashes, they were just seen as part of the game, but we know a heck of a lot more now about concussion than we ever did before, and I'll refer you back to last night's chat, myself and the Flowman, where we were talking about CTE with Clayton and just how dangerous that is, what that does to the brain. We're still learning about it. The brain is one of the great uncharted beasts that we don't know as much about as we would like to. We're learning more about it, and we now know that we need to protect the head, and the AFL is doing everything it can to make that point. So now if you choose to bump, you are liable for the result, and that is what Patrick Dangerfield has been done for. He hasn't been done on anything that he did intentionally. He's been suspended for the result of his choice to bump. And the tribunal came back and said that Dangerfield tried to have the charge downgraded to severe impact down to high impact, I believe it was, which would have reduced the length of the suspension. He did plead guilty to that charge, but only under those provisos, and that was thrown out by the commission, who said no, it was severe impact. And as a result, he gets 3 game suspension. Now, you can argue the point as to whether or not Dangerfield is unlucky here. Clearly, his intention was to lay a sharp bump. It wasn't to put Jake Kelly in hospital, and the accidental head clash can happen at any time on an AFL football field. But this is an accidental head clash, and a bump that results in an accidental head clash are apples and oranges. The AFL has clearly said if you choose to bump, you are responsible for the outcome. If the opponent that you choose to bump gets up and runs off and has no serious injuries or can play out the game, you'll probably be fine. In fact, you'll likely be fine. Not fined, you will be okay. You won't have any penalties come your way. If that person is knocked out, whether it be an errant shoulder which goes unintentionally high, or in this case, an accidental head clash, then you made the choice to bump, you'll be responsible for the outcome, and that's exactly what Patrick Dangerfield has had happen to him. It's going to cost him a Brownlow medal. It doesn't mean the bump is dead, but it is certainly on life support, the bump in AFL football, and I understand why. I also understand those who have been screaming from the rooftops on social media that our game is becoming soft. Well, I don't think it is the case that the game's becoming soft. It's becoming harder to play now than ever. You have to be some sort of athlete to be running around out there on an AFL field at the moment. But it's certainly got to a point now where the head is being deemed sacrosanct. Anything happens to the head, and there will be repercussions. This has me worried. Now, I mentioned this in our chat about CTE. Where is the line? Where do we stop in a contact sport such as AFL football? Because one of the great features of our sport is the high mark. And I'm worried that the high mark could be next under the gun if players, as we've seen before, they'll jump high, the knee will come up as part of the leap, and quite often players get kneed in the back of the head. Now, obviously, I don't want to see the end of the high mark, but I'm worried that that's what could be next if we have any serious concussion incidents that arise from a high mark either being not taken or being taken. It doesn't really matter if it's completed or not. It's the action of bringing the knees up. I wonder if that could be outlawed in the future. I certainly hope not. But there's no doubt that the game now is becoming less and less recognisable from the game that we grew up with perhaps in the 80s and early 90s. Is that a good or a bad thing? I'm not sure yet. I guess I'm sentimentally attached to the way the game was when I grew up watching it as a youngster, and many people are. But there's no doubt the entertainment value of today's game as well is certainly high. I enjoy watching football today almost as much as I did many years ago. You don't see the biff and certainly the bumps and the things that we saw back then, but some of the athletes on display and the power running, the defensive side of the game, the tackling is as disciplined and as hard as it's ever been. So there's certainly some good things to come out of it. Paddy Dangerfield at the moment would be licking his wounds and feeling a little bit unlucky, given that I think we can all agree that it wasn't his intention to put Jake Kelly in hospital, as might have been the case back in the 90s. The reality is, though, he chose to bump, and Jake Kelly did end up in hospital, and Paddy Dangerfield, as a result, has a 3-week holiday, and it won't be the last time we see it in the AFL, probably this season.
I think the stat man might be absolutely right about that, and he'll have more AFL with us tomorrow on the Flow Sports Fix. But coming up next, there is a show that is celebrating an anniversary this weekend here on Flow, and we're going to be chatting to one of the principals of it. Yes, Andy Marr from Inside the Ropes. He's coming up for us next.